We are going to have a panel discussion now. Wait, hold on. I know this. Better Allies. That's right. Anybody ever heard of the book Better Allies? Maybe? No? It's by Karen Catlin. And we're going to have a little discussion around the theme of that book, which I will let Mr. Bruce Tate here introduce you to. And also the panelists will introduce them because I just don't have notes to introduce everybody. So. All right. Give it up for the panelists.
Thanks, Brett. Is everybody having a good time?
Yeah.
So this is a talk that was originally done at another conference. There was a panel that was done at a local conference, and Blue Cross Blue Shield was there, and so Jennifer was the host. Could you tell us a little bit about that panel?
Yeah, I attended that panel, and it was just about really, it was a panel for women in tech, and talked about how men can advocate for women in tech, and how women who are more senior in their careers can advocate for other women in tech, and also other underrepresented groups.
So this panel is called Better Allies. It's based on a book, the book by Karen Catlin that Brett mentioned. Check it out if you're interested in that kind of thing. And what we'd like to do is kind of introduce ourselves for a little bit. Then I'll ask a few questions, and we'll see where that takes us. And if there's a little bit of time at the end, then we'll also get to some questions from the audience. So my name is Bruce Tate. I put on this shindig. I run a company called Roxio, where we have a subscription service to learn new programming languages. And I also am an author of a lot of the books in the Elixir space.
I'm Emily Maxey. I'm the VP of Marketing at Very, one of our sponsors, and I've been in tech for most of my career.
Yes. My name is Richie Richie, and I'm a software engineer for a company called Rain in San Francisco. I work remotely from Chihuahua.
I am Nikki Muzinis. I am a senior software engineer. I am in the market, and I've been, my first career was, and my most important career is as a mother of 5 that I homeschooled, and then 7 years ago I went to software.
So it's a really cool panel, and everybody on the panel is a majority in the majority in some way, and is also in the minority in some way, and I think that's interesting. So Emily, one of the things that got me most excited about this talk was the idea that to be an advocate, you need to do more than feel something and say something about an issue. So can you give us a good idea about the overall theme of Better Allies?
Yeah, so the book starts out by naming 50 different types of privilege, and that really struck me because, you know, obviously there's privilege with race and with gender and, you know, sexual orientation, things like that. But there were a bunch that I had never thought of because I have that privilege, so I don't have to think about it. You know, things like being able-bodied or not having dyslexia, having a college education, just a ton of things that that are just part of who I am that had never struck me as privilege until I read the book. And so the book really details different ways that you can advocate for people who have less privilege than you do, and it says, you know, you don't have to be in a leadership position to be an advocate for someone else. It's also really highlights the fact that it's not about, you know, being a white knight and writing in and saving the day or something like that, but it's about elevating those other people and, you know, when someone else has a good idea, bring it up in leadership meetings, things like that. So it's a really, really interesting book.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that was interesting about the book was that he spent, and Karen, that's a she. She spent a lot of time talking about individuals and their stories. And one of her points is that everybody has a story, And that defines our experiences in some ways. So maybe we could take a quick pass down the road here and just tell us a little bit about your story, how you got into technology, and yeah, and we'll take it from there.
How much time do we have on this one? So I grew up in the South, and so around me, the role models that I had as potential careers, I was always very ambitious, but the potential careers that I saw around me were mother, teacher, nurse, and that was pretty much it. And then I had, movies, TV, and things like that, so then you add in journalist and, media person, and then that's about it. And so I went to college for a journalism degree and graduated the year that the first iPad came out, which hit the newspaper industry pretty hard. And so ended up being a copy editor and a designer for a newspaper. And then that turned into a design at a magazine. And then really, I ended up at a really toxic job where I was like, I'll take anything, I just need to get out of here. And ended up applying for a marketing position at a technology company. And really fell in love with it because tech is, when you're marketing technology, especially to other businesses, people just want the facts. And that's what journalism is as well. And so I found that doing tech marketing really combined my love of digging into things really deeply that are confusing or inaccessible and explaining them in accessible ways. So that's kind of my journey into tech.
So you found yourself in technology in kind of a pretty abrupt move, and there weren't a lot of women around you at the time, so what was that like?
Yeah, so I was the only woman at my company at my first tech job. At my second tech job, I was the most senior woman in the company at like 25. And then, I've been the only woman in the room in a lot of experiences. I'm very comfortable in that environment, but it's definitely something where I read this article called The Elephant in the Valley, and it was someone who had been in tech, a woman who had been in tech for her whole career, and had seen no movement in the number of women in the field. And she said she really regretted not doing something earlier in her career. And I thought, wow, I really don't want that to be me. I don't want to look at the end of my career, see no movement, and think I should have done something. And so that's really kind of where my passion for the topic comes from.
So Richie, you've been in very much a position where you've been in the majority and in a minority, right? And you've also been in a place where you've done multiple careers. So what were your career paths?
When I was 18, I was actually a musician working in a bar and all that stuff. But at the time, there was the security crisis in Mexico. So being a musician was kind of dangerous because we were late at night. So I tried that too. So I found in programming that it was creative and that I could express myself, even though you're basically doing most of business stuff. So that's how I got into engineering, and I studied college computer science engineering. Chihuahua is a very industrial city, so it's very common to study some kinds of engineering related to system administration or networking or programming. And that's how I found myself studying and working in programming. And one of the things I noticed, even since school, it was that most of my classmates were men, and once I got into work, all of them were pretty much. And yeah, it's actually, there's a culture of machismo in Mexico where, men has to do work and women don't really, they're not as, they don't have the push of their family as much to do it if they don't really want it. So
So, a lot of stress and heart attacks from men in Mexico also, right?
Yes, it's very stressful. At my first job, I didn't know about this. Like it was normal for me, but you can, like, looking back, you can really see that all of them want to prove themselves that they're better than you. So it took me a while to realize I don't need to be better than anyone. Really, just enjoy what I'm doing. And yeah.
So, a serious question, if you don't mind. What instrument did you play?
I was a bass player.
The bass players took over the world. And so Nikki, we have a good friend in common.
We do.
Yeah, what's his name?
Jay.
Yeah. So, and what would they know him by?
Jay too?
Yeah, Jag too.
There you go, yeah, he's on the Twitter. And he's also Ruby Outlaw, right? And you know, so this is a funny story. My dad is a quadriplegic, and Jay's in a wheelchair. And so when I see someone in a wheelchair, the problem is when people see someone in a wheelchair, because their legs don't work, it's only logical that their brain also doesn't work. And you wouldn't think this is the case, but if you've been around someone in a wheelchair that you know and you love and you know they're intelligent, and you see enough people talking like that, you're like, holy crap, people really think because their legs are broken, they don't have a brain. And so Jay is a white guy, right? And so in that case, he's in a majority. But in the fact that people just assume he's stupid, he's with all the rest of us. So,
Which is really funny because the guy is a card-carrying Mensa.
He's great.
Probably the Mensa guys were saying, oh, dude's really smart.
Yeah. So I met Jay about 5 years ago, but before I lose it, I do want to mention that my trajectory to be a mom and then go on into tech was set actually in 6th grade. When my 6th, 7th, 8th grade science teacher, get this, his name was Mr. Stoner. Anyway, he ran in every other Friday programming class, and I learned how to program BASIC. And I was really good at it, when you spend an hour every other Friday doing it, you're going to be amazing. But I left middle school thinking that I was amazing at computers. I understood what was going on way more than people around me. And so then when I went to college, I'm like, I'll do math because I love math, and I'll do this computer thing because I think there's any money in it eventually. Then I was able to wrap back around after I was a mom, ready to go back to work so I could make money, because I don't know if you know this, but teachers make crap. So then I went back into tech to make money, and I found myself at a small startup where I started to feel increasingly isolated. And this is how Jay came into play. We had met at I'd given him a bunch of crap at RailsConf because we actually shared the same time slot. So I was up against him. That was not good. They just must have hated me, the schedulers. So we shared a time slot together, and we went to dinner and stuff. And then I reached out to him at one point, and I said, "Hey, have you worked with many women? Have they complained about feeling isolated? And how have you helped them not feel so isolated in the workplace?"
So let me interject a second. So James has a big tattoo. And what's on his tattoo? Do you know this story?
I have not seen all his bodies.
Okay. I'm afraid to say that I have. So, he actually has Disney princesses, right? Which is awesome. He also has a daughter who he loves very deeply. For those of you who were at City Elixir last year, he talked about the programming contest, and Nikki was part of the team.
I'm the idea person. Yeah. So I've flown out to CJ twice in Oklahoma and participate in that contest, which is always great fun because whenever you get a group of people together to solve a problem, it's just lots of feelings, good and bad. It's good. But when I was really struggling with isolation, Jake stepped in and he started meeting with me one-on-one on originally a bi-weekly basis because it was pretty bad. But then we backed it off to like a month basis and then farther back because he came right back and said, I haven't worked with many women, shocking, but he still wanted to be supportive, and so he offered mentoring for that support. And the mentoring really turned out to be like therapy sessions that we help each other with.
And life-changing, right?
Life-changing, yeah. Mm-hmm. Also, another big thing he did for me was when I was on the hunt for a job and I was talking about salary, he was very helpful that's a hard area to parse, especially when you don't have enough experience. So him sharing, actually talking turkey, actually talking about real numbers and what I should be doing and giving me advice. And all you ladies in here, always counter. Listen to me, 2 words or 1 word, counter. You get an offer, you counter. There you go.
And so he did something that was specific. This is exactly what the book Better Allies is about, right? So instead of feeling good about an issue, feeling that you white guys, I'm talking to you, right? And also everybody else in the room who can be an ally to advance an agenda. It's not enough to feel good about something. There are tangible steps that you can take to actually make a difference for someone. And so, Emily, who was that champion for you?
There were two that come to mind in two really critical points in my career. The first one is a woman named Leonora Williamson, and she was hired on at a tech company that I was at. And what she did was incredibly simple, and I'm sure not significant to her in her mind, but she said, there's this local group called Chattanooga Women's Leadership Institute, I think that you should join it. And at that time, I had never held a leadership position, I had never thought of myself as a leader, I had not seen, other than her, women who were leaders, and so it was a completely new concept to me, and I was like, I like telling people what to do. This sounds really fun. And it completely changed the way that I looked at my career. And then the other one is the CEO of Very, Ryan Prosser. And when I first came on at Very, there were a couple of things that he did. The first thing, he said, what do you want to do with your career? And I said, well, I'd like to be a VP of marketing, maybe a CMO one day. And in my head, I'm thinking, maybe 10, 15 years down the line, I'll get there. At the time, I was director of marketing, and he said, okay, let's put together a plan to get you there in 1 year. And it's going to be the hardest year of your life professionally, but it's going to be the most rewarding year of your life. And a year later, he made good on that promise, and it was the hardest year of my life professionally, but it was incredibly rewarding. The other thing he did is he asked me, what lights your fire? What are you passionate about? And I said, I'm passionate about women in leadership and women in tech. And I told him at the time that I was hired, we were about 30 employees, and I was the third woman. And none of them were in technical roles. And I told him, this is a problem. We need to fix this. And he said, I agree, let's work together on that. And, he wasn't looking to me for all the answers, because that's something that happens a lot with people who are in the minority. Well-meaning people want to help, and they say, tell us what to do. And we're like, we don't know. It's a big, complex problem. And we've been chipping away at it, and we don't have all the answers, but it's something that we're working really hard at. And he also encouraged me. He said, okay, you're passionate about that. What are you doing to make good on that passion, to make a difference there? And the answer was nothing at the time. And since then, I've started speaking at conferences on bias in AI, and I've spoke at Grace Hopper 2 weeks ago, which is the largest conference for women in tech, 25,000 women in tech there. And so really his encouragement that, I feel like an imposter because I'm a woman in tech, but I'm kind of not, because I don't code. And so there's always that imposter syndrome, but his encouragement to really just go after it, just because you aren't, a woman in tech doesn't mean you can't advocate for women in tech.
And you might not see it this way. Your advocacy in the form of support of this conference. Very twice in a year, twice in a row, we're sitting looking at this agenda, and paying speaker expenses is a big deal. If you want any kind of diversity at all in the speaker list, paying for the mentoring program, this front row is practically all mentees. You're making a big difference in that way, so thank you very much. And for Barry, real quick. You've been a teacher 2 ways, so tell us about being a professional teacher.
Yeah, so I worked in the U.S. for a year, part of my career, and when I came back to Mexico, to Chihuahua, I started giving classes in the university as a professor for college. Like, it was the last semester for computer science. And one of the things I noticed, and I didn't expect, is that some of them are not actually in the class to learn how to code because they might have other plans on their career. They might focus on networking, or they might just want a college degree and do something else. You know, their parents might be pressuring them. So it was really hard to give class in an environment where half of them, or more than half, they're not really interested in the subject that you're teaching. So about 2 years after starting, I quit giving classes in the university. And what I started doing is that I started teaching people who come close to me and say, hey, I really want to learn how to code.
And what was the difference between the two?
That the people that asked me really did want to. So that meant that they were interested, they were eager to learn, and that they wanted to do homework, they wanted to explore by themselves, like, what is it about coding, everything.
So wait a minute, you're telling me that, that to get you for a mentor, people had to do something really, really difficult. They had to ask.
Yes.
And you're saying that it enriched your life, and that's something that you'll always do.
Yes. So for me, working in the United States was a really good experience, and I think it really helped me in my career as a person, everything. So I wanted, when someone asked me to teach them, I wanted the same for them. So I started finding ways to get them a salary, even if that salary is not enough to live, but maybe to pay for gas and to really come to the office every day so that they can, they won't drop off. And I have, my first experience was a friend, and she started administration, so I'm not really coding at all. But she was really interested, so I told her, let's make a project, come every day. I found a way to give her a little bit of like a salary so that she kept going. And it was that for like a year. And then she started finding small jobs where she could, like, entry-level jobs. And right now she works for a consulting company in Mexico, and her clients are in San Francisco. So like, that's very rewarding.
That's so cool. So I have to tell a little bit of story about Richie, probably about the 80th time I've heard it. So he's in Austin last year, and he's got the flu, 103, 104 temperature, something like that. He's giving his talk, so he says, I wanted to run Elixir in this Java data shop, so I'll take this. I can't work it. Well, maybe I can get them to run one Raspberry Pi, right? And we can run our whole application on the Raspberry Pi. And then he turns on his accent, and so he's in front of all of Austin saying, it's just a little pie, you can put it in the corner, no one will know. So I'm sensing a theme in your career, Ricardo. You're kind of sneaking in, the programs with it. But that's what an ally is, isn't it?
Yes, I didn't know at the time. I just wanted to So at first, before, at the start of my career, I did notice, and I didn't do anything. Like, I did notice there weren't women in my classroom. There weren't any women in my first job, and I didn't do anything. So after I learned that I wasn't doing it, and I was like, I need to do something. So, and I realized that sometimes even wanting to learn is not enough if you have to pay for gas, and you have to pay for lunch, and you are not in your house. You have other things you need to pay for, so that's why I always try to give them something, try to sell a project, or maybe find a company that will pay for the internship or something.
One more question before we flip it back to Nikki for a second. So who's been your champion?
My champion. So when I was still in Mexico with no experience in the US, I found two people in a conference. Their names are Joe Aben and Francisco. He's from Spain. And so they talked to me for like, I don't know, 2 hours, and they liked me as a candidate for the company. They work for a company called Helpworks out of Chicago. And so they say they were interested in me to make an interview there, but I was living in Chihuahua. My salary was not enough to actually go to Chicago for a week. So they paid for it. They convinced the company to pay for my trip, my hotel, and being all in the activities. And they interviewed me, I think, 4 times during that week. And when I came back, I think 2 days later, they told me, hey, there's an offer for you. So that's how I started working in the games.
So Nikki, you told me that, or we touched on it a little bit, that sometimes your ally can help you through adversity a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that's worked in your life?
Well, just having someone help you embrace that you're not crazy is very valuable, especially when you feel like the things that you're seeing don't make sense. And so oftentimes, Jeg was that person. I can always reach out to Jeg. He's always just been there as far as a big supporter. And it's always, the other thing is that if you're very good at what you do, and you find someone that's in a minority that's also good, the fact that you kind of endorse them to their face and tell them that they're good, especially when you're clearly good at what you do, Jeg is good at what he does. So when Jeg's like, man, yeah, I love working with you, it's like, that's great, right? And then there's another guy that I work with named Stephen Ball, and he worked at me. He's worked with me at the last 2 places that I've been. He actually came with me. Well, he didn't come with me because I didn't recruit him or anything. He just followed me to the last place that I was, and he's been great because. And one of the things that Stephen has done for me in adversity, the number of times that he has said in a meeting, "Oh, you mean like Nikki just said?" That is so incredibly helpful. The number of times that I say something. And then someone, so it might feel like it's just happening to me. I'm sure it happens to everyone, but it does seem to happen to me a lot. Where Stephen's saying, "Oh, you mean like Nikki just said?" That has been so incredibly helpful. And also another thing that my allies have done to help me through hard times is, and that I try to do for other people, and you pass it on, is mock interviews. I'm an experienced interviewer. I've done at many companies. And so when I find a woman who's in the market or she's trying to find work, I'm like, hey, you know what? If you want me to interview you, I'm happy to interview you and give you feedback right there. And so she'll be talking and like, don't say that because I'll try and give, I'm not trying to tell them what to do. I'm trying to just give them feedback on what I've experienced in interviewing. And so when you can provide hard things like that, which is like backing them up in meetings or providing interview help, these are very tangible things that most of us can do.
So Emily, I saw you nodding so hard, I thought you were going to tweak a neck muscle or something there. So what made you agree so strongly when Nikki was talking about the verbal encouragement from her allies?
Yeah, one thing that, especially when I first started, our CEO encouraged me to do, so I was on the leadership team, which was all men, and we would be in leadership meetings, and he had a really good sense of when I have strong opinions, which apparently my body language just kind of portrays that. But he would go around the circle and hear, everyone else is, speaking up on their ideas, and then at the end he'd be like, "Emily, what's your take on this?" And it's something that isn't even related to marketing, but he wanted to hear what I had to say, and it's not something that I, at that point, had the confidence to speak up for myself. But it turned out I had valuable things to say, which is awesome. And that's really huge. Saying, Emily has a great idea. That's a great point. Reiterating things that other people said that might have been, sometimes people are talking at the same time, and someone may hear it but doesn't really acknowledge it, and that's really huge. There have been so many times since I've been at Berry that Ryan, my mentor, has told the whole company, marketing is the lifeblood of this company, you need to help Emily out, like Emily is doing really great work, just all of these things that are very affirming. and that give me more confidence in the work that I'm doing. And so anytime that you can do that for someone else, especially when it's somebody that you really respect, it means a lot.
I was in a meeting with Steven one time, and we were discussing, was in a group of like, I don't know, 6 to 8 guys, and we were discussing architecture for something. The last person was a security firm, and so everything has to be secure, and we have a lot of legacy that we had to still deal with. There were just a lot of problems that we had to solve to get this one particular thing architected. And we were in this discussion, and Steven will tend to think that I'm right. And because he has this tendency, and I don't know where he came up with this, but he'll assume that I'm right. So at one point I piped up, I'm like, and I said, this is my problem. And everyone at the table looked at me like I was from Mars. And Steven sat there for about 5 seconds and says, oh, she's way ahead of us. That was like one of my favorite moments in my career. Because like he got it, because he assumed that I was intelligent and could get there. He understood that I didn't even realize that I was steps ahead at the time. But he realized that I'd already jumped from where they were ahead. Everyone else was looking at me like I just didn't know what I was talking about. So that was super helpful.
Okay, I'm going to do something dangerous here. So we're going to open up to questions from the audience of the panel. But I don't want to have just kind of I don't want this to be meaningless. What I'd like to do is challenge you to challenge the panel. Like it's so. Diversity in technology is hard, and so I want to hear specific questions about, kind of questions you have, or things that are difficult, problems that you have, or maybe you don't agree that that these are viable steps in the first place. So challenge us a little bit. Brett, you want to run one mic, and we'll show the other one. So questions for anybody in the panel. Again. You want to, I'm Bruce, don't ask me, ask Emily, or Richie, or Nikki.
I'm a biracial young lady. I'm half white, if you met my dad, and I'm half Filipino. And as a female, I tend to advocate for myself. Anytime I'm at school and we're talking about issues like this, like the boys will go like, oh, the feminists are coming. I'm like, already here, you should have seen this conversation. When talking to people about that, what's the best way to get people of majorities and minorities, or people just who don't seem interested, like what's the best way of including them and saying like, this is actually an issue that you guys and everybody should be talking about? For anybody on the panel.
Okay, so generally speaking, when you make something, when people lack empathy, what you want to do is try and help them see themselves in that position. So although my talk on APIs could easily have gone women versus men, I don't pick that because that seems adversarial. That now is like so loaded, it seems adversarial. If you pick military and civilians, who there's a clear API gap, you're not putting anyone on the defensive. Or if you pick like celiacs versus people that can eat wheat, right? No one feels like they're a lesser person for being a celiac where they shouldn't. And no one feels like a better person necessarily because they can't eat wheat. Like, these aren't things where necessarily going to stir up people's emotions. But they might, for a minute, get a chance to feel what you feel. The reason why people in the majority have a hard time feeling what it's like to be a minority is because they themselves haven't been a minority. So if you can offer an opportunity for them to experience what that feels like, to not just be in the minority, but maybe even visibly look different, and have them experience that awkwardness that you feel. Because if they can't feel what it feels like, they're going to minimize that feeling, because we tend to minimize what we don't know. Thank you for the question. And keep advocating for yourself.
So I've had a lot of conversations lately with my peers about diversity and hiring people that are different than you. But there seems to come up this thing about, well, we can do that if we kind of lower our standards. And for me, I don't think that's true. Yes, but I want to be able to like have a very productive conversation with them because they're in a different way of thinking about the problem. And I've wondered if you've had these conversations and how you go about handling them.
Okay, so generally speaking, there we go. Generally speaking, what you want to do is, when you improve your interview process, you're not doing it for women. You're not doing it for people of color. You're doing it because a rising tide raises all the boats. Just because the problems affect minorities the most doesn't mean they don't affect people in the majority. Basically, you want to make sure that everyone gets a fair shot at the interview process. So when your interview process or any part of that seems to miss something in one group, most likely you're also missing it in another group. So the sell is that a rising tide raises all the boats. You improve your process, it makes sure that you're finding the right qualities, regardless of how the person looks, regardless of anything about them, you're going to find those right qualities. So I'm a big advocate of using some type of consistent standard like rubrics. We're going to ask these consistent set of questions. These are the things that we really care about, because then you know the values of the company, and you're judging all the candidates as the same. If there's a lot of leeway in your process, it possibly hurts any candidate that comes through. Because what we do is we take what we know about them and we kind of project what we associate with that thing. And that can harm white guys, that can harm black guys, that can harm black women, that can harm Latinos, that can harm every group. And so selling it and getting people to come on board is really about making the process better for everybody. Because a good process, a process good for women, a process that's good for minorities, people of color, it's better for everybody.
I will say I've had that exact same conversation. So your experience is unfortunately not isolated. But how I responded is just diverse teams outperform non-diverse teams. It's proven over and over and over again. Businesses with diverse leadership teams are more profitable than businesses with non-diverse leadership teams. And that doesn't mean have all women on your leadership team. It means have a diverse set of perspectives, because you can see things that are in someone else's blind spot, and they can see things that are in yours. So that's how I respond to that.
And a couple of years ago, I worked for a company. It's called Topeka. And one of the things we started doing for bigger companies to help them with their hiring process is to hide the names or the universities or some of the data in the candidate that will have an impact on the recruiter. And that made it automatically, they started choosing more diverse candidates because they were leaning on the names to find out. They already thinking about race and they thinking about education. If they see a name of a famous college or famous university, that will affect their process. So we started doing this for big companies, and automatically they started hiring different people.
So some of you might know that we have a mentoring group that happens on Thursdays. If you're a woman, minority, or you want to bring one, you can join us on Thursday. We'll do a cool thing like the photo booth. Might not be the photo booth, but one of the things that's cool is that we've had the opportunity to build relationships with other companies. And this last year we had the pleasure of working through an internship, and we were able to turn that internship the person who was hired turned that internship into a full-time job, and success at that company has changed everything. We basically had the placement, and then for 3 months we heard nothing, and then we heard a call from HR that said, "Give me more, gosh, we want more people like this one." So I would say two things. I would say that success changes everything, and the second thing is that if you are hiring right now, and if there is a system that is not allocating resources as efficiently as it might, it is to your advantage to find those imbalances. I mean, if you're a baseball person, then that's what Moneyball was all about, was finding where the value was, undervalued resources, and bringing them in. And when you do that, it makes us all better, it makes us better companies, it makes us more productive companies, It's just a great way to behave. You do have to work harder because one of the things that's making the systems imbalanced is that we don't have the same types of distributions of resources. A good example is when Emily went to the panel this summer that kind of tipped this one off, we found a statistic I'd never heard before. So to apply for a job, a male will need to know 60% of the skills that he needs. A female will need to know 90 to 100% of the skills that she needs. That's stunning, right? So what we have to do is look harder, but when we look harder, we can overturn some of those imbalances and hopefully it'll work out. Yeah, so we have a question here, Brett.
Go up over here and then we'll go up there.
So, Nikki, you mentioned like trying to have a rubric that describes what's actually important for your hiring process. And it's really easy to fall back on, oh, we just click. And actually what that means is we all like Star Wars and
Right.
we all have the same cultural background.
Dude, he has Dungeons and Dragons.
Right, yeah, oh yeah, we totally want that, right. So can you give some concrete examples of things that you would say, all right, this is a quality that we actually identified that anyone of any background should have for our team?
Sure. So when I was at Spradley, I was the sole technical interviewer for many rounds. And so I think that because I'm very familiar with how that rubric worked, I can give some examples of the technical rubric. Crossover into culture, those are harder to find because I haven't done that yet. But when I give an interview, I always give the same questions, first of all. My questions are always the same. I don't click with somebody because they come in and say they like skating, and then I talk about skating. But I end up talking for 20 minutes of an hour about skating, and then I think they're a great person because I heard myself talk for 20 minutes. Not that this will ever happen in anyone's interview. I've never had a guy say that this has happened. No. But so the idea is that you want to have a consistent thing, and so we would pick, for example, some places I've been, distributed systems have been important. So we have a distributed system question, and we will actually have criteria that we're using, like, do they understand CAP theorem? If they don't understand CAP theorem and you tell them CAP theorem, can they reason about CAP theorem? Or, can they explain the different methods in a web call? Can they, very tangible things. Can you tell me why a global variable, what are the trade-offs of a global variable? What would you consider before including a dependency? These questions give you a lot of insight into what the skills you're actually concerned about. Like, I don't care if someone agrees with me on all kinds of things if they don't understand the danger, the possible danger of including a dependency, especially in the world of MVM. Holy smokes, right? So if they don't understand that, they're really not qualified, and I should be able to cross them off the list. So I think that it comes down to having to really think hard about what skills you want so that your technical assessment is actually giving you the candidates you want, because I think everyone in this room has worked with someone they shouldn't have had to. They've worked with someone that just can't do their job, but somehow they got through that process. Not only will this help the right people get through the process, it will stop the wrong people from getting through, but it's really hard to say because of the fact that what you're looking for may differ. But like for us, we looked at it and said distributed systems was important. Understand how web services work is important. What are if someone says that they're a security expert or they're good at security, and we're like, okay, can you give me some please list some possible attacks. Man, if they can't tell me injection, no go. Like, there are some things that are absolute must. You have to be able to identify these security risks, and it'd be nice if you add a few on. And good Lord, tell me you're an encryption expert and not realize that what I've done in my past, because you put that in your resume, I'm calling you on it. But it would have to be the rubric, of course. But if it was in the rubric and they said they knew encryption and they didn't know encryption, didn't know the difference between public key, private key, or didn't understand how things worked, those are very hard criteria to judge people by. Also, one other thing I wanted to tap on earlier about the number of skills a guy has to have versus a woman. Ladies, or anybody, just don't tell yourself no. Make someone else tell yourself. That's period. Don't be the one that takes your name off the list. Make someone else take your name off the list. Oh, sorry, did I answer your question? Yeah. Okay, I just start rambling sometimes.
We have a question over here. David? What's up, David?
So you get hired, And I saw something on 60 Minutes last year about Salesforce and how the president and CEO of Salesforce said that they were going to do a review and see what the pay gap was between male and female. And they said, well, we have a very progressive San Francisco-based company. We're doing great on that front. And then they studied it. They found out there was like a 20% gap.
Shocking.
Cost them millions of dollars. And they said, what are you going to do about it? And they said, well, we're going to give them more money. So it's taboo to talk about your salaries. But once you get in the door, when you do find out that, no, as a guy, I found out several times that women that were working in a company that had many years, like my senior, were making way less than when I came in at. And I felt terrible. And
It's not your fault.
right. But what advice do you have for anyone in that kind of situation?
Are they prepared to lose their job? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. How secure are you to, I mean, I have been in this situation, this exact situation multiple times, and I know about it. I'm sure on it. And it's a hard thing because you just, I read a tweet recently where a guy said, if we could go back, we would have all the salaries be transparent. But then he referenced the capuchin monkey thing, you know, where they have two monkeys that are going to task, and they make the first monkey do a task, they put the rock in the cage, and the monkey is supposed to hand it back to the researcher then gives it a reward. The reward was a piece of cucumber. Then they go to the second monkey, and they put a rock in, he hands it back, and he gives him a grape. Now, grapes happen to be the favorite food of these monkeys. And then he goes back to the first one, and he does the task, and when he gets a cucumber, he is not happy. So it happens again, the next time, the monkey takes it and throws it back at the researcher, like, I'm done with this. Naturally, you know, like, those kind of inequalities, basically they take away your will to succeed. And I don't know, you can take it to management and you can try and get it corrected, but I don't know what the success rates are. I have not had always great success. I mean, one time it was rectified, another time it's not. I haven't had the best success. You just have to, it's a dangerous territory, and it's better if we just don't even have that to start with. Everyone should go through, if they want to, you know, if you want to make things transparent, you totally can. You just got to go through and do what Salesforce did, but most people don't have the backbone to do that.
So I've had this exact situation as well. I found out that male coworkers were making significantly more than I was, even though they had less experience. I'd say as someone who uncovers an imbalance, please tell the person, because that is the thing that often holds us back. Well, I mean, yeah, obviously, once you know, then it's what you do with it. But if that woman doesn't know, she could go her whole career being significantly underpaid and never know. And so I think raising it to that person or those people is important. The other thing that I'll say is we at are a small company, and we have an open salary model, and it's 100% transparent. If you go to apply for one of our jobs, you see a salary range on the website, and that I thought would be really weird and would be, you know, very distracting, but it's actually really helpful and very clear, you know, here's the next progression, you know exactly what everyone else is making, and it just, if you have the ability to implement something like that at your company, I know at larger companies or at companies where you're not in a leadership position, that's extremely difficult, but it's been hugely successful for us.
And secrecy in salaries is just a power game. It drains power from one group.
Okay, so we've got about 2 minutes to wrap up. Actually, instead of taking this, so can we take your question offline, please? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hey, my name is Amari Smith from Topeka University. My question is, so for students on campuses or different grades or workplaces, how can we reach out to students in grades K through 12 to show, to stress the importance of diversity and create diversity in this field? Reason I ask, just to give an example, amongst African American men, there's been studies that have shown that 1% of them have pursued a doctorate in computer science. and that's credited low comparatively to the other misses. So how can we stress that importance to the generation coming after us?
You are in a great position to be a great role model. And I think that it's not just you. I mean, obviously you can connect on one level, but a lot of times people can't imagine what exists. Like if you climb the mountain and been at the top and looked out, and you could go down the mountain, you can't describe what it's like to be at the top of the mountain. We have to have people going in and helping these kids see what it looks like from the top of the mountain, because they can't even envision it. They can't even picture it. We aren't always very creative. We can't always see what's available. When you step into, like, first of all, STEM education is sorely lacking, right? Like, all of this comes down to, there are people, and people change with interaction. And that interaction right now isn't there, because if it was there, they would understand the possibilities that are sitting out there, and they wouldn't just settle for less. So we have to find ways of showing them what's out there and showing them how to get there. But right now, that is just it's just some dream out there, or they may not even know it exists, and if they know it exists, they don't know how to get there. We need to make that API much clearer.
So we're going to go through one rapid fire thought each.
It's a huge problem, but start somewhere, start today, because if we all start together, it will become a much less huge problem.
Yes, and I would say if you are part of a minority and a majority, start doing things now and be responsible of actually doing something. So be responsible for your part, because it is a problem.
I am not leaving you with my last thoughts sitting down. The rule of power that we need to know now is that you don't look back at the past and worry about it. That doesn't get you anywhere, because it just brings on guilt and other things to other people. We have to figure out what we want for the future and go straight towards it. Don't talk about the past, aim for the future, and move forward.
Yeah.